Hi, this is Ophoria, the digital reader, and I just kind of wanted to talk about my thoughts and takeaways from July Comic Book Month. But first, I wanted to kind of talk about why I started Comic Book Month. I would say for the past 10 years, I've really just been hoarding media, and I haven't really been experiencing it that much. At the beginning of every month, I would buy a couple books, I would buy a couple comics, I would buy some music, and I would really just kind of squirrel it away. I always meant to read those books, I always meant to read those comic books, but I just never did. So when I retired, I decided I'm going to make reading my hobby, and I'm actually going to start to dive into this backlog. And when I started to do it, I really was starting to enjoy it and I wanted to talk about it, but there was nobody who really cared in my small family circle. So I started this channel. I felt like I don't really care if anybody watches it. I just want to talk about this to the public and get my feelings out there. And I really enjoyed it. And I found I had other stuff to talk about and things that I've always been a big advocate for. That kind of just became the thrust of my channel, which is, you know, owning your digital media, trying to find digital media that does not have digital rights management, and also going to publishers of digital media that doesn't have digital rights management who are making quality media and buying that and supporting them. Now, one thing I did learn from July Book Month is definitely I'm a book person now. I absolutely prefer books over comics, and for the most part, when I was going through Comic Book Month, I just found that a lot of the comics, I was like, meh. There were definitely a couple that really interested me and blew me away. But for the most part, I was just like, I'd rather be reading a book. Now, I am still going to be doing July Comic Book Month for a while because I still have around 260 comics left in my queue to get through. And those 260 comics, some are single issues, but a lot of them, just because I got a lot of them on good deals on sale, a lot of them are going to be volumes and collections, which means they're going to be pretty big collections. I mean, for example, I read ElfQuest in July, and that was 750 pages. You know, I read Barbaric. That was like 650 pages. And so I have a lot of comic books to go through. And I imagine that if I do a comic book month in July, my backlog will probably last me a couple more years, probably 3 or 4. The other thing is, I'm just going to be much more selective in buying comic books. If there's something in my backlog that I find is really, really good, then I might buy more of those issues that I collected. As a matter of fact, I've already bought more of the Black Widow comic run, which I really liked. I've bought more of the Batman Bruce Wayne Murderer. I really like that, so I bought the second graphic novel of that, and I also bought the first volume of the Batgirl series because I really liked the idea of it, and I was curious to find more about that artist, how they did Batgirl. I mean, Batgirl was a character who had so little personality in almost all the other early iterations of her that finally seeing her with her own origin and story and personality, it made me interested enough to go ahead and buy that. So I probably will pick up one every now and then. Another time I really think I'm going to be picking them up is during the Eisner Awards. Once I run through all of my comics, or the majority of my comics, then what I'll start doing in July is mixing up books and comics. I'll read a couple books, but I still will hold July as where I'm going to read the comics I've currently bought. And also what I'm going to do in July is every July, I'm going to go over the Eisner Awards in that year. I'll talk about the runner-ups, I'll talk about the winners, and I will also, based off of the runner-ups and the winners, if there's anything that's interesting to me, then I'll pick some stuff up for that month. And that way, what I'll generally do is, starting in July, I'll catch up on whatever comics I have left. And if I run through the comics I got for that year, then I'll just go ahead and go back to books in July. And then I'll do like my last episode in July will be the Eisner Awards. And then in August, what I'll do is when I'm talking about all of the books that I bought, what I'll do is in July, I still will not buy any books. And that way, when I talk about August, my book life, I'll be talking about the comic books I got and any comic books and books that I read. So I'm not really going to be a regular comic book reader anymore. I may read one or two comic books when it's not July, but I just really liked forcing myself to get through those comic books in July just because I felt I read a good amount of comic books that I would not have read if I hadn't have given myself a specific time to read them. Kind of like when I do the Kindle Unlimited month in January. Kindle Unlimited month in January, I really got through a bunch of those books stuck on Kindle Unlimited that I wanted to get through, and also added a couple more that I was interested in for next year. So that's kind of the wrap up of July Comic Book Month. I am definitely just going to be focusing on every year getting through the backlog of comic books. I don't see myself continually buying comic books, maybe once in a while, but I'll be much more selective, and primarily I'm going to be making those purchases in July. And then what I'll do is once I've gotten through my comic book backlog, then in July I'll read whatever comics I happen to pick up in the prior year, plus any books, and also talk about the Eisner Awards runner-ups and winners. So that's it. That's my thoughts and my processes and my wrap up for Comic Book Month. This is Ofori, the digital reader, and keep reading.